In this video, we're going to discuss about the different key features of the graph of a function. So there are four main different key features that I want to discuss in this video, and that is the domain, range, the x-intercept, and y-intercept. All right, so our first example is this graph. We're going to find the different features of this graph. First is the domain. Domain, when you say domain, it's actually the set of all possible values of x that where your graph is defined. And you can find actually your domain in your x-axis because it's the set of all possible values of x. But don't forget, this is your x-axis here, right? And this is your y-axis. In this, you call it Cartesian plane. Because domain is the set of all x's, so we look at the domain. And to find the domain, all you have to do is determine how far your graph can go to left or right, because it's the x-axis, left and right. Okay, so as you can see in this graph, your graph goes as far as -9, and there's a closed circle. So that means your domain will start at -9 with a closed circle, and it's all the way up to the right. The graph can go as far as -6, which is, +6, which is an open circle. So my domain will stop at +6 open circle. So closed circle at -9, and it extends up to +6 with an open circle. So now remember inequalities. So if you have that segment, you can write your domain in this way, right? So your domain now will be, if it's a segment type, you have variable in the middle, okay? And on the left side, you have a closed circle, -9, so that means less than or equal to -9, okay? And on your right, you have open circle at 6, so less than 6. So we're going to use our skill on writing inequalities. So this is your domain. The next feature is the so-called range. So range is actually defined as the set of all resulting values of y. Okay, resulting values of y. So that means we're looking at the y-axis. And so the range, to find the range, you need to know how far your graph can go to the bottom up to the top. Okay, from the bottom to top, low to high. So as you can see in this graph, the graph actually goes as low as -6. That's the lowest part of the graph. Yeah, determine the lowest part of the graph. And here you see, you don't see an open circle. You don't see an open circle. Yeah, so that must be a closed circle at -6. So from -6, and the graph can go as high as the highest part of the graph. It's actually at 4, and I don't see any open circle, so that means it's a closed circle. So that's your range, okay? The lowest up to the highest part. So it's closed at -6 up to closed at 4. So when you write now your range, it will be, because it's a segment, so you begin, this time you use y, because range is for y, okay? On your left, which means the lower part, is closed -6, so it should be less than or equal to -6, okay? And the right side, which means the higher part, is closed at 4, so it should be less than or equal to 4. So this is your range. All right, so the next feature that we will find is the intercepts. Now there are two kinds of intercepts. We have the x-intercept and the y-intercept, okay? So let's begin with the x-intercept. The x-intercept is actually, it's the part of the graph, so this is your graph, the part of the graph where it touches the x-axis, because it's an x-intercept. So the part of the graph that crosses the x-axis, and this is your x-axis, it's here, right? It's this part, all right? It's -1. The number there is -1, okay? And don't forget, for x-intercept, the value of y there is 0. So the way you write your x-intercept should be in this format. X, the value of the x, which is -1, comma, and then the value of y is always 0. Okay, so now if we write our x-intercept, the value of x is -1, so it's actually a point, so -1, the number is -1, and then the value of y is always 0, xy, okay? And then as you can see in this graph, does it touches at 6? No, because it's an open circle. That means the graph does not touches the x-axis at 6. If it was a solid circle, then that must be another x-intercept. Okay? But because it's an open circle, that means it's a hole. The graph doesn't touches at that number. So that means this is the only x-intercept that we have. Okay. Next is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is the opposite of x-intercept. It's actually the part of the graph that touches the y-axis this time. Okay, So as you can see in here, the graph touches the y-axis at this number. It's actually between 1 and 2. If you zoom it in, it's between 1 and 2. Yeah, between 1 and 2. So that's 1.5. So for y-intercept, this is the format of writing the y-intercept. The value of x is 0, so you will start with 0, comma, then the value of the y. So the y-intercept will be, the value of x is always 0 for y-intercept, comma, the number on the y is 1.5. So 0, comma, 1.5. That's your y-intercept. All right, so our next example will be this graph. Let's begin with the domain, the first feature, the domain. So again, for the domain, you need to know how far does your graph can go to the left and right. How far can it go to the left? So as you can see in this graph, to the left part, it goes, well, if there's an arrow, it means you can extend it infinitely. So therefore, on the left side, your graph can go infinitely to the left because of the arrow. All right, and then towards to the right, your graph actually is only until this part. All right, the graph can only go to the right up to this part, which is a positive 7. Okay, so this will be your domain. To the left is an arrow because of this arrow. It goes infinitely to the left, and then it goes up to a positive 7. Now remember, inequalities, you'll write down the domain. So because it's array, it has close to the left with an arrow, so you begin with the variable x. All right, and then the symbol will be close to the left, means less than or equal to, and then that number, which is a positive 7. So that's your domain. Next is the range. The range, again, remember the range, you need to know how the lowest part of the graph up to the highest, because you're using the y-axis. So as you can see, this graph here, the lowest part is here. This is the lowest part of the graph, which is at 0. So, and then I don't see an open circle, that means it's a closed circle. So it starts from 0 and goes up all the way. Well, because there's an arrow again, so this part will go infinitely up. So that means the graph, the range will also go infinitely up because of that arrow. It goes infinitely up. So from 0 up. So now to write your range, okay, because it's closed up or closed right and up, they're the same. So you begin with the variable y. Closed up means greater than or equal to. All right, greater than or equal to, and then the number there is 0. So 0. So this is your range. All right, next are the intercepts, beginning with the x-intercept. It's where the graph touches the x-axis. So as you can see, this graph, it touches at this part of the x-axis, which is at 7. So your x-intercept will be, for this graph, will be 7. So remember, for x-intercept, you have to write it with parentheses. The value of x is 7, and then it's always paired with 0. So that's your x-intercept. All right, for the y-intercept, this time, y-intercept, it's where the graph touches the y-axis. So this is your y-axis, and it touches at this number, which is another 7. So your y-intercept for this graph is 7. So the way you write your y-intercept will be parentheses, beginning with 0 for x, and then the number for y is 7. So 0, 7. So that's your y-intercept.